frogs have a tendency to sit on the glass, and so you end up with these little frog butt prints, which, as cute as it is, are annoying. This is something that we do currently weekly. So going through and just making sure that our microhabitats are in the range that we want them to be. So checking our basking, both temperature and UV, and then having a squeeze to make sure that there's still a range of nice cool spots. So I've got two lovely little bits of equipment here. This is a thermal image reader. So this is a nice fancy bit of equipment. So what it does is shows us the full sort of temperature map of our enclosure. We can see the gradient up on the side, so we've got cool spots all the way up to hot. And it will calibrate to pretty much every environment that I have. So what I'm doing is just looking for both our ambient and our basking sites as to where all my hotspots are sitting. These snakes in this enclosure are Reptile pythons, so they are found around Alice Springs. So they are a nice warm weather snake, like it a little bit more dry than some of our tropical pythons as well. As they're ectotherms, they don't regulate their own temperatures, and so we need to do it for them. And if it's not right, we can get lots and lots of different health conditions with these guys. But with these enclosures, because they are so large, we can give them a range down from 0, so absolutely no UV access, all the way up to what would be equivalent to a midday bask. So they have complete and utter choice with what they want to access and what they don't. There's spaces where they can access just UV and not basking, so heat, and spaces where they can access just heat and not UV. So it is completely up to them, and that's the benefit of having a much bigger enclosure, is they can choose. So UV is a requirement for all living things, us included, not just these guys. With our morning checks, we go through, make sure that everything is nice and clean, that we give our water bowls a bit of a scrub. Snakes are a bit unlike a lot of other animals. They don't necessarily need to drink every day, but we do provide them with fresh water every day. This exhibit is a little bit different from the one next door. You couldn't get more polar opposite if you tried. This is a rainforest, and a tropical rainforest. So we're looking at a much more humid exhibit. We try to keep this exhibit around 60–70% humidity, which is why it's got that really large pond in the middle, because these guys in here are found in tropical far north Queensland. So they require a much different climate from the guys who are our desert species next door. So desert species, some of our basking spots can get up to that 40-degree mark. I don't necessarily want that in here for these guys. Most of our basks sit at highest around that 35, 36, 37. And same thing with UV. It's much lower in this particular enclosure because in a rainforest system, you're looking at a much denser area of vegetation. These guys are going to be occupying treetop canopies. With the mullets, which are these lovely little skinks cruising around, they're going to be occupying a much lower ground level, and the UV won't penetrate as heavily. Most Reptile Keepers that I've come across, it has been their absolute life's passion, and it is very much a really, really close-knit group of people who absolutely love everything herpetofauna. I came in a little bit differently. When I first started with Zoos Victoria, I was at Werribee, my second contract, working with reptiles for the first time, and I had no experience, none. I knew very little about them, was very much a bird person, and before that a marine mammal person. Ended up by chance getting offered a contract here at Healesville, working with Reppies, and again it was a bit of a, I'll take it, I'll learn, and didn't expect to, 4 years later, 5 years later, be here and be, very enamoured with this group of animals. They are incredibly unique, incredibly interesting. There's so much more to them than people ever really give them credit for. They see a snake in particular and are a little bit either frightened by them or weirded out and think that they are just, these mindless, predatory, scary animals, when that could not be further from the truth. They have such massive personalities. It takes a little bit to get to know them. You've got to earn their trust a little bit more and sort of learn to understand what they're telling you. There's not too much familiar in their facial expressions when we think about a dog or even a bird or even a koala. They're familiar, they're mammals, they're fluffy with the case of birds, their feathers go poof when they're happy. With a snake, there's not a lot there that you can sort of compare to what you understand in your life. So it takes a little bit longer to sort of figure out that yes, this body positioning and yes, this sort of behavior means I'm happy or I'm a little bit not happy or I'm hungry or you know what, I'm cranky, I want a nap, leave me alone. But once you do, you get to create just as unique relationships with these guys as you would with any other animal. Sherby in particular here, this lovely lady, she is very much an independent woman, loves her space, but she is also probably the most water baby I have ever met when it comes to a python. She loves a drink. So if you come in with a nice gentle mist, she'll be your friend. She's probably one of the prettiest snakes I've seen. Her markings are gorgeous. And it's also incredible watching these guys move. Snakes can hold so much of their body upright, climbing vertical surfaces with almost no effort. But you can see how she's contracting all those muscles, curling herself around that bit of fern there to help her get up. And this is why we create really complex environments for these guys as well. It is really important to get them to use all of their muscles, not just having a nice easy flat perch for them to climb up and sit on. This is a real natural behaviour for climbing. We want them to have to climb a vertical perch, have to climb things that are a little bit smooth or a little bit rough. It's good for both their physical health and for their mental stimulation as well. So this sort of wraparound you're seeing now is a real python climb. So this is how they climb vertical structures. They'll send themselves up and then coil their bodies around the perch to get a really good hold. Once they're nice and braced, they'll go up again with that first third of their body and then repeat the process. And that's exactly what we want to see. Thank you. Frogs are endless stomachs. There are a couple of frogs in here who will attempt to eat all of the crickets, and if that is what we did every time, that one frog would get all the food and everyone else would get nothing. So we do a little bit of tongue feeding. I normally feed Franklin a little bit first, so he is our male Boyd's Forest dragon. So people always forget, that frogs are predatory. So they will actively hunt bugs, they'll actively hunt, you missed it, hun. Depending on the species, sometimes small mammals, sometimes snakes, sometimes bats. Our white lip that's in here, he is a big hunter. Green trees in particular, they are really hard to say no to. They are great fun to feed and real sweet animals, but yeah, will eat anything and everything if they can. They're kind of like a Labrador puppy. Yeah, so multi-species exhibits are an interesting one. They can be a bit of a challenge sometimes. You are trying to create, especially with reptiles and amphibians, an environment that replicates the natural environment for each of the animals that you are looking after. But these guys do naturally occupy the same habitats in the wild, so we're able to really put together that sort of microclimate in an appropriate way for each of them. What it does by having them all together is, for us, it gives us the opportunity to really appreciate different species all in one space, but for these guys, it creates very much a social environment. The frogs would naturally come into contact with each other and another lizard in the wild, and it creates that sort of very much more changeable enclosure for them. So they're not just by themselves, even though they are technically a solitary group of animals. It means that things in their environment are constantly changing. It means that there is always something that is happening, something that's engaging for them mentally. And so what we're doing when we're in here and servicing as well, we're not just cleaning and making sure everything looks beautiful and pretty. It gives us a really good chance to sort of do quick daily health checks and sort of demeanour observations to make sure everyone is nice, happy and healthy.